Good morning, students. We are going to start our second lesson in English. Now, before we get started, I want all of y'all to think about a famous personality. We usually see that these famous people have had to go through a lot of hardships and struggles to get to the position they have today. Similarly, our lesson deals with a young boy and his struggle to get famous. So let's begin. Lesson number 1.2, Dick Whittington and his cat. I want all of you all to have your textbooks in front of you all. I have given you all meanings to certain words. Pay attention to pronunciations. All right? It's a very interesting lesson. I want all of you all to pay attention. Let's begin. There was once a poor boy called Dick Whittington who lived in a small village in the south of England. He had no proper home, for both his parents had died, and he was unkindly treated by many of the villagers. One day, Dick overheard someone say that the streets of London were paved with gold, and he decided that he would go there at once and pick his fortune up in gold pieces from the streets, for he thought people might treat him more kindly if he were rich. So young Dick set out to walk to London. He had not gone far when a man in a cart stopped and asked him if he was running away from home. I have no home, Dick answered. I am on my way to London to find my fortune. I'm going to London myself, said the carter. Jump up here beside me and we will journey together. They arrived in London just before nightfall, and the carter left Dick and made his way to an inn. Poor Dick stood alone and looked around him in despair. Where was all that fine gold? All he could see were dirty streets and lots of unfriendly people. He had nowhere to sleep, and in the end he spent the night in the corner of an alley where he hoped he would come to no harm. Now, here we see a small little boy, all right. He has no parents, which means he's an orphan, all right. And people, obviously, because he was an orphan boy, poor boy, they never wanted to treat him nicely, so they used to treat him very cruelly, all right. They didn't give him any food, no job, so he had to survive on his own. And one day he overheard someone say that the streets of London were paved with gold, paved to be covered with gold. Now that's not exactly true. London was very rich at that time, all right? So people spoke of it as a way of saying that if you go there, you could make a lot of money, all right? And he decided to walk to London by himself. Thankfully, there was this man that was passing by, and he thought that Dick had left home and was running away. But when he told him that he was going to London there to find his fortune, okay, to make his fortune, meaning to go and get rich, because he believed that if he were rich, people would treat him more kindly. This man takes him to London, and then obviously he drops Dick off at London City, and he goes to stay in an inn. An inn is a small little place to stay, okay, like a small little hotel or a lodge, okay. So here we get to see that Dick obviously was left alone again, all right, and he was looking around on the streets to see if there was any place where he could find this gold that people were talking about. But in dismay is to be very, very disappointed. In the end, he had no place to sleep and he had to go and sleep in an alley. An alley is a narrow path between two buildings. Okay, and he was just hoping and praying that no one would come and harm him. Okay, let's move on. The next morning, Dick woke up cold, miserable, and very hungry. He wandered around begging for food, but again and again people shouted at him, "Go away, you lazy fellow! Be off with you!" and aimed angry blows at his head. At last, he collapsed in the street and lay there, too weak to look further for food. By chance, Dick had fallen in front of a house belonging to a rich merchant called Mr. Fitzwarren. The cook was trying to drive Dick away when Mr. Fitzwarren returned home from inspecting his ships. He stopped and said to Dick, "Why don't you work if you need food?" "I would work," said Dick, "but I know nobody who would give me anything to do." Now, poor Dick, obviously, the next day when he got up, he was so hungry and he was cold. London has very cold weather, all right, and he was wandering around asking people for food. But again, people being unkind, all right, they were cruel towards him, so they used to hit him. Angry blows, meaning to give someone a beating up, all right, and he was so weak, he was so hungry that he collapsed, all right, almost to faint. But fortunately for him, he had fainted in front of the house of a very, very rich merchant called Mr. Fitzwarren. Now, the cook over there was trying to drive him away, to shoo him away, all right, in case the owner comes to see him. And it so happened that Mr. Fitzwarren was coming home after inspecting his ships. He's a merchant. A merchant is a businessman. All right. And he said to Dick, "Why are you begging for food? Why don't you do some work and then I'll give you to eat?" So Dick says that if anyone would give me a job, then I would easily do it. But then people are so cruel that they do not want to give me anything to do. Okay. "Take him into the kitchen," Mr. Fitzwarren ordered the cook. "Feed him first and then find some work for him." So Dick was given a home and a living. He had a small corner of the attic to sleep in, and his job was to help the cook with all the pots and pans in the kitchen. Dick's life should have been much better than before, but he still had two difficulties to face. The first was that the attic he slept in was overrun by rats and mice. At night, they scampered all over him and kept him awake. After a time, he solved this problem by saving the few pennies he was paid and buying himself a cat. In no time at all, the cat chased away all the rats and mice, and Dick was able to sleep peacefully. The other difficulty, which was not so easy to overcome, was the cook's bad temper. She shouted and screamed all day and would scold Dick and hit him with a wooden spoon even when he was working as hard as he could. No one's kind to poor orphan boys, all right, or orphan children for that matter. Okay, so when Mr. Fitzwarren had told the cook to take him inside, feed him, and give him some work, he was very happy because finally someone had given him, food and work which no one else would do. And his life should have been much better, but he was still facing some problems. Firstly, he had to sleep in an attic. An attic is a small room that is inside a house right on top. You have to take steps and go climbing up, all right. And unfortunately for him, the attic was overrun with rats and mice, overrun to have plenty of, okay. And it so happened that they used to scamper all over him, to scamper, to move or run up from here to there, all right. And they would keep him awake because they used to keep biting him or they used to crawl all over him. But he solved this problem by saving up the money that he got and bought himself a cat. Now, a cat's favorite delicacy is to eat up the rats and mice. So the cat had solve this problem for Dick. The other difficulty which Dick had to face was the cruel treatment given to him by the cook. All right, so she used to hit him and scold at him, and she used to be so cruel towards him. And even though he used to work as hard as he could, he knew that she would still treat him cruelly. One night, Dick decided he could stand it no more. Early the next morning, before the cook was up, he set out with his cat to seek his fortune elsewhere. The two of them walked as far as Holloway on their way out of London. When Dick sat down on a stone to rest, it was the 1st of November, All Saints' Day, and the church bells were ringing. As Dick sat and listened, it seemed they were ringing out a message for him. Turn again, Whittington, thou worthy citizen, Lord Mayor of London. Lord Mayor of London? Said Dick. I should like to be Lord Mayor and ride in a fine coach. I can put up with a few scoldings from the cook if that is what is in store for me. So Dick and his cat retraced their steps to Mr. Fitzwarren's house. Luckily, they were able to slip back before they had been missed. Now, he's a small boy, and how much cruelty can one person suffer or tolerate? All right, so he decided that it's not working out for him, and he was going to go away from Mr. Fitzwarren's house and search for his fortune somewhere else. But then, as soon as he got a little away from London, all right, it was All Saints' Day. All Saints' Day is a day that is dedicated to praying to the saints, all right. And the church bells were ringing, and as Dick sat on one of the stones there, he felt that the singing in the church, all right, was giving him a message. What was the message? To turn again, to go back, all right, because they believed that he was a worthy citizen and he would soon be the mayor of London. So he thought that if I was going to be mayor of London, it's okay to put up with a little, to tolerate, a few little scoldings from the cook. If this was in store for him, that means, if he knew that he was going to be mayor of London, then these few little scoldings are worth it. So he and his cat decided to go back to Mr. Fitzwarren's house, and they were able to come back before any of them had been missed. Okay, before any of them could notice that they had gone away. Now, Mr. Fitzwarren used to send ships far across the sea to trade with other countries. He would load a ship with goods for the captain and ship's crew to sell in faraway places, and then they would bring back goods that could be sold at home. One day he called his household together. I am sending a ship to the African coast to trade, he said. Would any of you like to send something of yours on it? You can then share in the profits if the voyage is successful. Everyone produced something except for Dick, who had nothing to offer. Have you nothing of your own, Dick? Asked Mr. Fitzwarren kindly. And Dick replied, only my cat. Now, poor Mr. Fitzwarren was going to send, I told you, he's a businessman, so he was sending things away to the African coast to be sold, all right, and whatever they would make money and things that they would buy from there would come back, and then, he's a businessman in the end and he had to make his money. So he asked all his household members to come together, and he said, if you have anything that you want to give, okay, anything that you would like to send of yours, all right, if it was sold there, then the amount of money or the profit that we get back would be yours. So everyone happened to give something except for poor Dick. All right, he had nothing but his cat. So it's a very saddening thing to hear that an orphan boy, all right, who had only his cat to look after, and he loved the cat so much, but a time came in his life when he had to give away the only thing that he loved, and that was his cat. "Then let your cat go on the ship," said Mr. Fitzwarren. His daughter Alice said, "Dick loves his cat. Let me put something in for him." But her father said no, it must be his, not something belonging to someone else. So Dick fetched his cat and said goodbye to it sadly. The captain of the ship was delighted, for the cat was an excellent mouser, and so he had no trouble with with rats and mice on his voyage. So very sadly, with a heavy heart, Dick had to give away his cat. Alice, who was Mr. Fitzwarren's daughter, she knew how much Dick loved his cat, and she said, "Why not? I put something from his side." But the father refused, and it said that he had to give something that belonged to him. And sadly, poor Dick had to give his cat away. Who was very happy, delighted to be happy, was the captain of the ship, because on the ship maybe there were lots of rats and mice, and the cat was an excellent mouser. A mouser, someone who catches mice very professionally. All right. So we get to see what is a voyage, children. A voyage is nothing but a long journey. Okay, so we see how poor Dick, who was an orphan boy, left home, left wherever he was from in England and came to London, and he tries to get food, but then he gets a job. He buys himself a cat, and he has so much of trouble with the cook. In all these struggles, okay, we get to see Dick becoming a stronger person, a stronger individual. All right, and even though the thing that made him the happiest, his cat, he had to even let go of his cat. Okay, something that he treasured a lot. Okay, with that, we end with part one. I want all of you all to read the lesson right up till here. If you have any difficulties, mark them and keep. You could write the doubts that you have below. All right. So, thank you, class.